Brenda and Yasmin, two completely different people.
She's got some weird things in her room. I can't make head or tail of them.
Maybe she's a saleswoman for European country western clothes.
Hi, I'm Dolly Parton.
Who could never expect to be friends.
Don't play with your own kids.
I do not have any.
Except at the one place where anything is possible.
Hello, and welcome back to For My Consideration, a bonus series from And the Runner-Up Is, where I take a request from a patron to talk about any movie of their choosing that was nominated for at least one Oscar. I am, of course, Kevin Jacobson, and we are talking today about the 1987/1988, depending on when it was released in your area of the world. That movie, Bagdad Cafe, which was nominated for Best Original Song at the Oscars for the song Calling You. And the person who requested Bagdad Cafe is actually here with me today. He is a member of Film Twitter and has been on a number of film podcasts in this sort of circle. He's a Sporkle curator, and he's making his debut on the show today. Please welcome Christof.
Hello, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me here on the show.
Oh, I'm very excited to have you on. I've enjoyed our interactions on Twitter, and I'm excited to actually have a real conversation with you now.
So am I.
Yes. All right. Well, let's just jump right into this film that you've chosen for us today, Bagdad Cafe. A summary of the film. It is a comedy drama about a German tourist named Yasmin, who is with her husband in the Mojave Desert. They have an argument, and she ends up storming off and stumbles upon this truck stop, the Bagdad Cafe, which has a cafe and a motel, and she meets the owner of the cafe, Brenda, who is no nonsense, rules with an iron fist, and she doesn't really take kindly to Yasmin at first, but Yasmin sort of ends up helping around the place. She cleans things up. She is working as a waitress. She charms all the locals, and she actually ends up being a valued person in the community. And the film was directed by Percy Adlon, who co-wrote the screenplay with Eleanor Adlon, and it stars Marianne Sagebrecht as Yasmin, CCH Pounder as Brenda, Jack Palance, Christine Kaufman, Monica Calhoun, Darren Flagg, and more. And Bagdad Cafe earned about $4 million in the U.S. box office, $42 million in total when you count for worldwide, and it was nominated for that one Oscar, but it did not win. So, first of all, Christof, tell me why you requested that we talk about Bagdad Cafe and what your relationship is with this movie.
Well, Bagdad Cafe, or Out of Rosenheim as it's known in Germany, where it was originally released, and how I know the film for all my life, is a film that really has been there for much of my life when I was interested in film, and pretty much before I was interested in film. It is one of the favorite films of my mother. When I was growing up, it was often on television, sometimes because it was airing on TV, or sometimes because the VHS tape just got in. So I've seen this film very often, sometimes in its entirety, sometimes bits and pieces, even before I really got into movies. And when I got into films and then maybe rediscovered this film, it's just one of my oldest memories of films. And just knowing that this film got this kind of miraculous Oscar nomination made it almost sound like a challenge when I heard you saying that we can regress to one film. At least it must have one Oscar nomination. And as it's a film I'm often recommending people to watch, or asking them to watch, if they ask me for recommendations of maybe little-known films that just warm their hearts quite often, I just thought I'd have a go and throw it your way and hope you'd like it.
Yes, and I could say that I very much did. And I'm curious, actually, I assume you rewatched the film perhaps recently for this, but how has your relationship sort of changed since those early days of seeing it?
I think it has changed in the way. The interesting thing is, when it was on TV, it was always in German, but the German version of the film is a dub. It was originally, it was filmed in English. it somehow changed the perspective for me when I watched it for the first time in its original version in English, because the language barrier that is there and the kind of not really bad English, but also obviously not fluent English that Jasmine is speaking in the film, it plays such an important role and explains so much about the characters' relationships, especially in the early part of the film, and the way Jasmine feels very isolated in the beginning from the characters around her. That I really. The more films I watched and the more I got interested in films, the more I realized smaller things about the film that were really that made it not just a film that you watch to make you feel good, that I also realized how good it was, how strange it was, how it had SQ camera angles, how the hair of Yasmin has a journey on its own that's sort of mirroring the journey her character makes. All these things I sort of learned watching the film over the years and getting more into film. So this is why this film has grown very close to my heart.
I had no idea what to expect going into this. I had certainly heard of Bagdad Cafe. I'd probably heard the song at one point, but honestly didn't really remember it that well, even when I was sort of hearing it in the film. So this was a very interesting watch, and I have to say I was just very charmed by this, by the end, and I could really see how it could be a favorite of people such as yourself and your family and others. This is a film that just has a very sweet center to it, but it's not like cloying, it's not sentimental. This is just real people who are making these human connections, and on a certain level I think the plot is familiar in the sense that it's a stranger coming to town, no one knows what to make of them, but then slowly they're won over because of how charming they are. Pretty common trope, I would say, but there's something so warm about this, especially because I think no one here looks like a traditional movie star type. Like, obviously we have someone like Jack Palance here, but he's getting up in age at this point in his career, and everyone else just looks like a real person and they behave like real people. And one of the things I really responded to is the connection between Yasmin and Brenda, which I've seen some people say there's this kind of queer subtext there. I certainly picked up on that while watching it, and they have a bit of an odd couple connection, but I think they're really just bonded by having this sense that they have to deal with so much hardship in their personal lives and dealing with these men who have just abandoned them, and really finding the value in each other. And obviously Yasmin's feeling undervalued by her husband. Brenda is feeling kind of stagnant and is pretty unhappy for a lot of the film, but they're able to find that common bond and just bring out something positive in each other. And what's great, I think, also is that neither of these characters really comment on that. There's just sort of this unspoken relationship they have, and I think the screenplay never really has these characters getting too, self-referential. They're just living their lives, and we're just seeing this relationship very naturally evolve.
Yeah. It's got a bit of the trope where at the beginning they do not like each other, where especially Brenda is very aggressive towards Yasmin, and where they are both, at the beginning of the movie, they're both having great arguments with their husbands. Both are half abandoned, half sending the husbands away, and they're coping quite differently with it, because you get the impression that Yasmin is seeking validation, is seeking someone who to be gentle with, to be friendly with, whereas Brenda, who has a lot more responsibilities at the moment, she is running that motel. She currently has no coffee machine there, so she's always on the edge. She's angry at the beginning. She seems always out for a fight with anyone, and this clashes quite a lot at the beginning, and it eases over time. There's a pivotal scene where you see that change, and when quite literally the door is opened between the two, and they're getting closer to one another. But even although it is sort of a familiar plot trope of the very different people, people at the beginning don't like each other, will like each other by the midpoint of the film. I think the film does this quite well, and in the way that doesn't feel forced, but rather natural and coming from the characters themselves.
Right, exactly. And like, you know, with Yasmin, she's pretty unassuming at the start. You wouldn't think she would even be the person who we would end up following as the lead of the film, because, you know, people who look like Yasmin just sadly don't end up leading most films. But, you know, she's dressed conservatively. She has that argument with her husband and he abandons her, and she's pretty quiet for a lot of the beginning of the film. But then we see how she's really taking initiative and just can't help but be of service to this cafe and the motel, and she's just cleaning up everywhere even when she's not asked to. And we see how she has found herself useful, even if people like Brenda can't quite see it yet. And she's finding kind of a home there. And what you were saying about the hair, like she literally lets her hair down at a certain point.
Although it's a slow journey with her hair. At the beginning, she has a very strict bun with a few curls on the top, and then over time, just a few strands of hair are coming down. And the farther the film goes, by the midpoint or somewhere after the midpoint, her hair, she's just letting her hair down because she sort of has arrived at the place. And also, her character at the beginning is very shy and fearful and doesn't quite know what to say, but as soon as she finds some connections with the people at the cafe and with Branda's children, that warmth comes out of her, and that warmth that Marianne Sägebrecht just has and brings to the character really makes her shine, and then makes her really the main character and the main focus point of the film.
Yeah, some of my favorite scenes are actually those ones where she's just having these one-on-one conversations with the locals, or like listening to Brenda's son playing the song at the piano and just closing her eyes and just totally giving him her undivided attention. And it's these little interactions that you see why everyone in this community just grows to love her, because she listens to people, she cares, and she realizes what, you know, the other person's value is. And it's just these quiet little moments that really bring this to life. Like, I also love when she tells Brenda's son that she's from Germany, and he just seems really happy about that, and he looks at that photo of Johann Sebastian Bach, I think that's who that is.
Yes, it is.
Yes, that he's taped up because from Germany. I love those subtle little moments there.
Yeah, it's also in that moment when she is sitting there and when she's sitting there and listening to his music. We have seen him play the piano before, and he's practicing a lot, but it's really at the moment she is sitting there and listening to it, also the quality of his playing suddenly goes up, and we hear him play a lot better than we heard him play before, which is kind of a way of symbolizing the the magic she brings to the place, also later a bit more literally than at this moment.
Right, because he's also sort of been chastised at certain points for even playing music, and here's someone who's actually giving him the attention that he deserves. So it's really beautiful.
He's always told to stop playing as soon as a customer is in the motel or in the bar. Also, and we see him literally being told to stop playing at one time when Yasmin enters the bar. So her actually encouraging him later to play and to actively listen to him is one of those moments where she really warms up and he warms up to her.
Right. And I think, you know, Marianne Sägebrecht, I believe is how that's pronounced, is just so warm and so gentle in this part. And again, not even in like a stereotypical kind of Mary Poppins sort of way, like here's this delightful woman who's come to fix everyone's problems. She still seems like a real person who has these struggles that she has, but she also has this kind of magnetic quality, I think, to her that is really interesting, because, you know, in the beginning, even I wasn't totally sure about her and what she was bringing to the table in this part, but over time and by the end, I was just really totally won over by her, sort of in the same way that these locals are. So that was a weird sort of meta moment for me watching.
I completely understand that. Marianne Segebrecht is a wonderful actress who later had a very long and fruitful career in German television. And Percy Adlon is basically the man who discovered her, who wrote 3 films for her, 2 of them great, and one of them, let's not talk about it. And he really wrote those parts for her and just for her qualities to shine. And this is certainly the best of the 3 and the one that was most successful both in Germany and internationally. And it's just, it's a part played for her, and it really shows her strength very well.
Yeah, it really does. And then with Brenda here, like I sort of said in the intro, very no nonsense, always fighting with someone, whether it's her husband or her kids or Yasmin. There's pretty much anyone who gets in her way. I think, that's a character, especially in the first 2/3, that could verge into some stereotypes, but I do think she brings a certain nuance to it. There's just like this almost a steeliness in the way that she carries herself, which is why I think she would later go on to play so many like police officers and authority figures. Just she has that commanding quality to her. I think she just brings this feeling that this is a woman who truly has lived a life, who has gone through a lot of hardship, and there is just this natural suspicion that she has about really anyone that she allows into her life, like her husband who lets her down, and she, has all her little routines, and she thinks she has things figured out, and then here's this random German woman who's stumbled into her cafe, and she's sort of weaseling her way in and doing all this cleaning up around, and she's like, what is this woman's deal? And even if her suspicions seem to sort of carry on for a little too long, where like as an audience member you're just waiting for her to actually realize what's happening and the value of having her around, I think she does a good job, and so does the film, really, I think, of not spelling out exactly why she's taking issue with this woman. But if you're paying attention, I think you sort of understand on a deeper level why she's so guarded.
Well, she's very stressed. She has all these responsibilities. She has this daughter who isn't probably easy in the way that she doesn't have to bother about what she's doing, because she seems to get on with men maybe a bit too well for a girl her age. And there comes this strange woman pretty much out of nowhere. She has no idea where she came from. She's just suddenly there. She has these strange clothes, which are men's clothes, because when Yasmin and her husband went different ways, she accidentally got his suitcase rather than her own, which all adds to these suspicions. And as you said, it could probably go a bit quicker. She could probably be a bit quicker to warm to her like everyone else around her, but you never get the idea that she is doing that just for the sake of creating an artificial conflict to make the film longer.
Right, exactly. It does play out pretty naturally, and I do think that the eventually when we get to the point of Brenda really confronting Yasmin and asking what her deal is, and they're talking about kids, and Yasmin mentions that she doesn't have kids, it seems like Brenda really sort of softens in that moment. And then from then on, she really just sees her as a close friend, which makes sense. But I also think part of me was like, this is a very sudden turn almost, in the sense of this is a woman who's been hating this person almost for such a long portion of the film. And then they're kind of just always hugging, and they even kiss at one point. Like they're the best of buddies. So I think that's like a little bit sudden. Maybe there could have been a little more of a natural transition between those two modes, maybe even carrying over a little bit of that underlying tension into the third act. So I don't know if that's something to do with how CCH Pounder plays it, or the screenplay, but that was a sort of a sudden transition for me.
It is very sudden. It is really this moment where Yasmin just says, "I don't have any," very, very quietly and very, very sadly, where the character of Brenda pretty much turns around at a moment and reconsiders her and sees her as the human being that is there, rather than just the stranger who is bothering her and is intruding into her life. It could probably a bit softer, a bit better explained, but I think it still works because it is this pivotal moment, this pivotal line. You get the reason why they change. It's at least not an off-screen transition where you suddenly wonder what happened all of a sudden.
Yeah, well, that's another interesting thing to, along those lines, talk about the whole fact of her visa and the green card and how that becomes a bit of a conflict where she can't really work at this place for much longer and she suddenly has to leave like very quickly. She doesn't have much warning to do so. And I feel like another film might sort of get trapped in the weeds of figuring out, oh, she has to go back and like following her back to Germany and like how does she find her way back to this place. But what I kind of respect about the film is that it cuts out a lot of that. I feel like that would be too much fat for what this story really is about, which is about this connection between these two women, that even if like she doesn't seem like she's gone for that long, you still get the sense that she's missed. So I don't know, what were your thoughts on the sort of visa green card aspect here by the end?
Well, it's the major crisis the film probably needs in the third act to handle, and that there's something else happening in the film these characters have to deal with, but it doesn't draw it out.
Right.
The problem is dealt with in about 5 minutes of the film's runtime. There's it's never too tragic, but it's still you still get the importance the moment has when suddenly the place is very sad and drab and like it used to be before Yasmin arrived and the magic is gone. This is pretty much all you need to know about. You just need to see how Yasmin changed the lives of everyone who was in Baghdad and how everyone is just yearning for her to come back. And the film doesn't draw this out any longer than necessary.
Right. Well, speaking of magic, we have to talk about these magic tricks that she pulls off in the cafe, which is so charming. I love the entire montage of all of her little tricks. Honestly, I did stop and wonder how she did a few of them, like with the sort of plant that grows into flowers. I mean, I don't know, but this is a part where, you know, I think you really wish you could be transported to this weird little cafe with the German woman who does magic for you as she's serving you. Like it's sort of almost this manifestation of what she's done to this community, that she's literally enlivened it and made it into this magical place.
It's a beautiful, charming thing she does, and a beautiful thing that you really feel that this is a special place, and it feels you understand why suddenly this place is so popular and people are going there from all kinds of places just to watch her doing this magic act or these small magic tricks while she's serving the customers. And
right.
it's interesting enough, something that was suggested by Marianne Sägebrecht, because in the original version of the screenplay, they were just thinking about something like singing or cabaret acts, and the magic was a suggestion by her that really changed that part of the film around. So that's something that Marianne Sägebrecht brought herself to it.
Thank you for listening to this preview of For My Consideration, a bonus series from And the Runner-Up Is. If you liked what you heard and want to hear more, please go to patreon.com/andtherunnerup.is and become a patron. Only $3 a month will get you access to bonus episodes, a Slack channel, and early access to regular episodes. Thank you so much for your consideration.